300 Spartans marched into history, bronze against an empire, about to die together at a narrow pass. One Spartan marched back home, alive, unbroken in body, and wishing every single day that he had died with them. His name was Aristodemus. In Sparta, dying beside your king was glory. Surviving him was a fate far worse than death. Picture his homecoming. No parades, no songs, only the cold stares of mothers who had buried their sons at Thermopylae. He did not flee the battle. His king ordered him away, nearly blind from a raging eye infection. Sparta's law showed no mercy. This is not a story about a coward. This is the strangest, bloodiest redemption Spartan history ever recorded. What he did in the next 12 months would be remembered for 25 centuries. It began with one unbearable choice. Few people realize this. Sparta punished surviving far more harshly than it ever punished losing. You are about to see how one disgraced warrior turned public shame into one of the most desperate charges in ancient history. This is not just a battle story. It is the story of a man trying to buy back his soul with blood. Sparta would eventually forgive him, but not before trying in every way it knew to destroy the man he once was. Because sometimes the hardest thing a soldier can do isn't dying for his country, it's living with the shame of surviving it. To understand his torment, understand Sparta. From age 7, Aristodemus was raised in the Agoge, beaten, starved, forged into a weapon. He learned one law above all: return with your shield or own it. There was no honorable version of surrender. By 480 BC, he was a proven Spartan hoplite. When Leonidas chose 300 men to hold the pass, Aristodemus was one of them. Every man selected had already fathered an heir. Sparta was not sending soldiers to Thermopylae. It was sending men it could lose. At Thermopylae, bronze met bronze for days. Aristodemus stood in the phalanx, holding the line against wave after wave of Persians. Then an unseen enemy struck. A violent eye infection swept through him. His vision blurred and burned beneath his bronze helmet. He was not alone. A second Spartan, Eurytus, caught the same disease. Neither man could see the tip of his own spear. Leonidas gave a direct order. Both blinded men were to leave the line and recover in the nearby village of Alpeni. Imagine that order landing on a Spartan raised to die in formation, told instead to walk away while his brother stayed. Then came the betrayal. A local guide led an elite Persian force around the mountains. The 300 were surrounded. Hearing the horns of doom from the village, Eurytus made his choice. Still blind, he had his helot lead him back into the slaughter. Aristodemus chose to obey his king's order instead. He believed he was meant to live, heal, and fight another day. Historians still debate why the two men were judged so differently. Herodotus wrote Aristodemus alone might have been forgiven had Eurytus not turned back. It was the contrast that condemned him. One blind man crawled toward death. The other walked away from it. Sparta never forgot which was which. He carried his shield home across the Peloponnese, each step heavier than the last. His sight returned. His name did not survive the journey. What awaited him in Sparta was not an inquiry, not a hearing. In a city built on results, his reasons meant nothing. He walked through the gates expecting to report to the elders. Instead, he met the coldest weapon in Sparta's arsenal: silence. Word spread before he reached his own door. By the time he arrived home, his city had already decided what he was. He stopped outside his own house. His hand hovered over the door. He could not open it. Not yet. Because once that door opened, he would see it in his own wife's eyes too. The thing every Spartan now believed. Spartan magistrates gave him the harshest label in their language: Tresas, the trembler, a curse worse than any wound. Herodotus recorded the reality plainly. No Spartan would share his fire. No Spartan would speak his name in the street. At the gymnasium and in the choir, he was shoved aside without a glance, pushed to the lowest, most shameful place. Ancient sources describe how disgraced men were marked, patches sewn onto their cloaks, a visible sign for every child to mock. Under Spartan custom, no honorable family would marry into a coward's bloodline. His children would carry his shame long after he was gone. Another Thermopylae survivor, Pantites, could not bear the same disgrace. He hanged himself. Aristodemus refused that escape. He chose to endure the stares instead, sitting alone in the dark, polishing a sword the law forbade him to draw in his own defense. He did not beg for mercy. He did not argue his case. He simply waited. He knew Persia was not finished with Greece. Months crawled by. Athens burned to the ground a second time. The Persian general Mardonius wintered in the north with a massive army. Sparta could no longer hide behind its walls. The Greek city-states called for the largest combined army they had ever assembled. Aristodemus took his helmet off the wall and strapped on his armor in total silence. No wife came to see him off. Whether anyone wanted him there no longer mattered. Persia had returned, and every Spartan able to fight was needed. In the ranks, men stepped away from him without a word. He marched surrounded by thousands who behaved as if he did not exist. Imagine the smell of sweat, dust, and iron rising from tens of thousands of Greek soldiers. He had never felt more alone among so many. Why endure this at all? Why fight for a city that had stripped him of everything? Because he was no longer fighting for Sparta. He was fighting for himself now. Not for the elders who shunned him, but for whatever gods still watched what burned in his chest. In August of 479 BC, the Greek and Persian armies faced each other on the dry, scorched plain of Plataea. Few battles shaped the future of Greece more than Plataea. If Greece fell here, the course of Western history might have looked very different. Across the river waited Persian cavalry and thousands of infantry behind wicker shields. Dust rose with every restless step of the horses. For days, neither side crossed the river. The Greeks endured the heat as Persian raiders fouled their water and cut their supply lines. Tension cracked through the Spartan ranks. Orders came to hold the phalanx line at any cost. Discipline was all that stood between order and slaughter. But discipline is a virtue for men with a future to protect. Aristodemus had no future left, only this one burning day. Listen, Persian drums pound through the heat. Dust sticks to sweat. Cracked lips taste iron before a single blow is struck. The Spartan commander Pausanias ordered his men to crouch behind their shields, absorbing the arrow storm while priests searched for favorable omens. Men were dying in formation without striking a blow. Arrows split shields. The line groaned. It was close to breaking. Aristodemus looked past his officers toward the enemy beyond. Chain of command means little to a man Sparta had already called dead. Then the priests declared the omens favorable. The Spartan line rose as one, lowering their spears to advance together. For a moment it seemed Aristodemus would simply be another shield in the crush of battle. His private war buried under a collective one. But look at his eyes behind the bronze visor. There is no fear there, only the stillness of a man who died a year ago. Then, everything went silent. He did not match the rhythm of the war flutes. As the Persian line surged forward, something inside the trembler finally broke loose. He surged ahead of the formation that had defined his entire life. One stride became 10, and the distance between him and his brothers kept growing. His brothers shouted at him to hold the line. Their voices dissolved into the roar of his own pulse inside his ears. He broke into a run, not away from the enemy, but straight toward the heart of the Persian vanguard, almost completely alone. Imagine seeing thousands of Persian spear points rising to meet you. That is what closed in around him now. He was not chasing survival anymore. He was chasing the heaviest death the battlefield could offer him. He hit the Persian shield wall like a battering ram. Bronze scraped bronze. His spear shattered somewhere in the crush of bodies. He drew his Xiphos, the short Spartan sword, and fought his way through wood, leather, and flesh with brutal, uncontrolled force. He no longer fought with the discipline of the phalanx. Every strike was personal now, aimed at something no shield could stop. Herodotus later wrote that no Spartan fought with more raw fury that day than the man his own city had called a coward. Herodotus remembered Aristodemus as fighting with extraordinary fury, even though Sparta refused to honor the way he sought his death. An arrow struck his shoulder. He kept moving. A spear opened his thigh. He moved faster, driven by something past pain now. For one heartbeat, watching him cut through the chaos, you almost believe this broken man might actually survive. Every swing of his blade said what words never could. I am not a coward. I am Aristodemus of Sparta! As the Spartan phalanx advanced, Aristodemus was already far ahead of the line, deep inside the breaking Persian ranks. The Persian front finally began to collapse. At its very edge fought the man Sparta had once condemned as the Trembler. But no mortal fights an ocean forever. Surrounded on every side by Persia's elite, the blades finally found him. He did not stagger backward. Even as swords opened his ribs, he kept moving forward, into the wall of bronze and flame. Aristodemus fell onto a mound of enemy dead. For the first time since Thermopylae, his burden was finally over. When the dust settled, the Persian army was broken. Greece was saved. The empire that had burned Athens twice would not return. Tradition holds that on this same day, Greek forces also triumphed far away at Mycale, the Persian invasion ending on two shores at once. After the battle, the Spartans debated who among them had fought with the most valor that day at Plataea. Soldier after soldier pointed to Aristodemus. He had fought with a ferocity that unsettled both his enemies and his own countrymen. But Sparta stayed true to its own cold logic. The commanders ruled that true courage means holding the line, not charging out to die alone. They denied him the prize for valor. The honor went instead to a hoplite named Posidonius, who had fought and lived within the ranks. No one could call him a trembler anymore. Whatever Sparta had called him before Plataea, his family's honor had been restored. Herodotus himself preserved this story. Without his account, the name Aristodemus would have vanished from history entirely. 300 Spartans marched into history. Only one had to survive it. His name was Aristodemus.